Since 2000, NFL offenses have gradually shifted their priorities away from the run and toward the pass, ultimately leading to today's passing league, where explosive aerial attacks reign supreme. In their shift from power to speed, offenses have grown lighter and quicker, replacing big tight ends and backs with smaller, faster receivers. On your screen now is a graph published in the football operations section of NFL.com back in 2022. As the graph indicates, in 2010, 1 and 2 receiver sets made up the majority of offensive personnel groups. 11 personnel, meaning 1 back, 1 tight end, and 3 receivers, was deployed less than 40% of the time by offenses in the regular season. Now 11 personnel usage is up to over 60%, which has forced defenses to adjust. When 2 receiver sets on the offensive side were the standard, base personnel on the defensive side was the standard. Defenses would match the 2 receiver sets with 4 defensive backs, prioritizing size over speed. But now 3 receiver sets are the standard, which forces defenses into nickel personnel, or 5 defensive backs. Because of this shift in philosophy on the offensive side of the ball, nickel has become the new base. Back in 2010, defenses deployed nickel personnel at a lower rate than base personnel, but now nickel is the standard at a usage rate of over 60%. Deploying nickel personnel requires the defense to replace a linebacker with a defensive back, but that 5th defensive back plays a completely different role from the other 4. Nickels, or slot cornerbacks as they're typically known, need to be true hybrid defenders. They need to have the speed to keep up with receivers downfield, and the physicality to take on blocks at the line of scrimmage. Versatility is paramount, as a nickel might have to cover the fastest player on the field on one play, and put his body on the line against the run on the next. Despite the vitality of a great nickel defender in the modern NFL, guys who play this position continue to be overlooked and undervalued. So today I'll highlight the play of 3 of my favorite nickel defenders to watch: Buffalo's Taron Johnson, Detroit's Brian Branch, and Baltimore's Kyle Hamilton. I'll leave timestamps in the description for those of you who only want to watch one of the 3, but I encourage you to watch all of them, because you'll see that their roles and skill sets are not all that consistent with one another. I want to start with Taron Johnson, because he's the most prototypical nickel of the 3. The Bills are a nickel-exclusive defense, meaning when the offense goes heavy by taking a receiver off the field, the Bills tend to stay in nickel. During the regular season, Buffalo deployed nickel personnel on over 95% of their defensive snaps. And that nickel defender is always Taron Johnson. Instead of pulling Johnson off the field in favor of a 3rd linebacker against heavy offensive personnel groups, Buffalo leaves him out there to essentially play the role of a linebacker. Here, for example, against New England in Week 7, the Patriots came out in 12 personnel, which calls for 1 running back and 2 tight ends. But the Bills stayed in nickel. After the pre-snap motion, Johnson is lined up on the left side of your screen, responsible for the B-gap to that side. New England called duo, which is run toward the tight end and calls for double team blocks on the 2 defensive tackles up to the 2nd level. But Johnson is so quick to diagnose this run design that he's able to slash through the B-gap untouched and meet the running back at the line of scrimmage. When the offense goes heavy and Johnson has to play the run like a linebacker, he's at a significant size disadvantage. At 190 pounds, he can't drop an anchor and take on blocks like a 230-pound linebacker. But he makes up for that lack of size with an incredible ability to diagnose and trigger on offensive run designs. Johnson's ability to play the run allows him to play close to 1,000 snaps every season, and continuity at such a unique position is so valuable. Johnson is also one of the more reliable tacklers at his position, ranking 3rd among qualifying nickel defenders in missed tackle rate during the regular season. He isn't necessarily the best run defender or the best coverage player on the Bills roster, but his versatility and reliability make him the glue that holds Buffalo's defense together. Brian Branch was a somewhat polarizing prospect coming out of Alabama last offseason because of the uncertainty as to where he would fit best at the pro level. He played nickel at Bama, but some saw him as a safety in the league because of how he fared in man coverage. The lack of a positional distinction, along with a poor performance at the combine, caused Branch to fall to the 2nd round, and that made Detroit's front office very happy. Branch still isn't the best man defender at his position, but he's far from the liability that many thought he would be in man coverage. On this 3rd and long against Dallas, Detroit called man-free cover 1, which tells Branch to man up on CeeDee Lamb in the slot. Dallas called a sticks concept, which tells the 3 receivers on the strong side to break back to the ball at the line to gain. Knowing the situation, Branch doesn't bite on the speed release from Lamb, which allows him to make a play on the ball when Lamb is targeted. During the regular season, Branch led all nickel defenders in pass breakups with 11. He's an aggressive, instinctive coverage defender who can hold his own in man coverage and make some awesome plays with his eyes on the quarterback. Those of you who watched my scouting report on Branch last offseason know that I was super high on him coming out, but even I didn't think he'd be such an asset in coverage in year 1. Though he did line up at nickel over 70% of the time during the regular season, Branch's skill set allows Detroit to move him around the defensive formation. That versatility was constantly on display back in Week 11 against Chicago. Here, the Bears are facing 3rd and 2, and Branch is lined up on the line of scrimmage opposite the number 2 receiver. Chicago called a quarterback design pin and pull right at Branch, which tells the receivers to block down, the left tackle to pull to the edge, and the back to lead block. Branch must spend some time in the film room because he knew this run was coming. As soon as Justin Fields took his first step, Branch was defeating the crack block from Darnell Mooney to maintain outside leverage. After he threw Mooney to the ground, he swam the tackle, held his ground against the back, and met Fields at the line to gain. This rep is a great example of why Branch is already a special defensive playmaker. He pairs incredible anticipation of offensive technique with extreme competitive toughness at the line of scrimmage, which makes him one of the best run-defending defensive backs in the entire league. Later in that Week 11 game against Chicago, the Bears went heavy with 2 backs and 1 tight end, or 21 personnel. Detroit deployed base, but instead of taking Branch off the field, they put him at post safety in this cover 2 call. Seeing the designed rollout, Branch anticipated DJ Moore's break to the outside and made a beautiful play at the catch point. Fields was a tick late and inside with this throw, but meeting the number 1 receiver on an outside breaking route from the post is not normal. This is the leverage that offenses look for when they call these smash concepts. Branch was just better than the play call should have allowed him to be. He's an aggressive defender, so he's going to give up big gains on occasion, but the frequency of reps like this is far higher than the frequency of reps where he gets beat. Branch has quickly become a versatile defensive weapon, who most teams regret passing up on in the draft. Before you rush to the comments to tell me that Kyle Hamilton plays safety, let me explain why I included him on this list. It's not that Hamilton isn't a safety, he's just not a typical safety who plays the post or inside the box exclusively. According to Pro Football Focus, during the regular season, he lined up on the line of scrimmage 51 times, in the box 206 times, at free safety 275 times, and in the slot 403 times. Judging purely on alignment distribution, he's one of the most versatile defenders in the entire league. Despite being a defensive back, one of Hamilton's best traits is his ability to rush the passer. Last season, he had the 19th most pass rush reps among defensive backs, but the 6th most quarterback pressures, and tied for the 2nd most sacks. This was a huge issue for the Colts offense back in Week 3 when Hamilton totaled 5 pressures and all 3 of his sacks on just 12 pass rush reps. Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald gets real creative with his simulated pressure calls, and this 3rd and 8 is a great example of why they can make a quarterback's life extraordinarily difficult. Pre-snap, Baltimore deploys a bear front, covering all 5 offensive linemen with the apex defenders up on the line of scrimmage. The interior defensive linemen are coached to drop out when they occupy an offensive lineman, and Patrick Queen is responsible for the running back. So post-snap, this becomes a 4-man rush with Hamilton coming in off the edge, defensive lineman in the low hook, Queen on the back, and banjo calls in the secondary, which essentially tell the defensive backs to cover whoever breaks to their side first. When Gardner Minshew receives the snap, his hot read is covered up, and before he has enough time to progress, Hamilton is there to force a punt. Indianapolis faced another 3rd and 8 on the following drive, and McDonald dialed up another brutal blitz, this time sending 5, including Hamilton, to overload the right side of the offensive line. Pre-snap, Hamilton doesn't allow the quarterback to see the blitz coming before he calls for the snap. He's flat-footed and his shoulders are square with the number 2 receiver, until the quarterback tells the right guard that he's ready for the snap. As soon as Minshew lifts his right leg, Hamilton is up on the line of scrimmage ready to explode into the backfield. Post-snap, he beats the back in pass protection and gets to the quarterback for another sack. Later in that same game, the Colts finally called a play designed to exploit these blitzes. It's a zone scheme RPO with a hitch from the number 2 receiver attached, and Minshew's decision will be determined by Hamilton's post-snap movement. If Hamilton stays with the number 2, the back gets the ball, but if he blitzes, Minshew hits Josh Downs immediately. Hamilton's blitz should have made this an easy positive play for the offense, but he anticipates the throw, gets way up and knocks it out of the air to force an incompletion. In addition to being a huge asset in the pass rush, Hamilton has been phenomenal in coverage. Out of 88 qualifying defensive backs this season, Hamilton ranked 23rd in completion percentage allowed, 2nd in yards per reception allowed, and 4th in passer rating allowed. Here, Baltimore called cover 1 rat with Hamilton on Jamar Chase. This is the matchup that Bengals head coach Zach Taylor looks for when he puts Chase at that number 3 spot. So Cincinnati's play call is designed to take advantage. The concept tells the number 1 and number 2 receivers to run clear outs and Chase to run an outbreaker isolated on Hamilton. But instead of getting toasted, Hamilton anticipates the break, closes to the ball, and makes a great play at the catch point to force the incompletion. For a guy who's 6'4", 220, his closing speed is nuts. Testing speed and game speed are two completely different things, and in the game, Hamilton flat out flies. Watching these nickel defenders over the past couple weeks was a blast. I've always had a lot of respect for guys who can play the position at a high level, but narrowing my focus to the nickel position alone allowed me to see not only how hard of a position it is to play, but also how wide the range of skill sets and play styles is at nickel around the league. Guys like Taron Johnson, Brian Branch, Kyle Hamilton, Trent McDuffie, Kenny Moore, Mike Hilton, and Michael Carter are all examples of why it's not the X's and O's, but the Jimmies and Joes that make the difference. These are players who can not only execute a variety of assignments, but can also rise above that assignment and make plays when the defense is out-schemed. So no matter who plays nickel for your favorite team, pay closer attention to him next time you watch, because you might be surprised by how significant his impact can be. Thank you guys so much for watching, and for your patience. I spent a semester studying in Europe, so that's why I haven't uploaded in almost 6 months, but I'm back now. And I plan to upload every Friday from now until week 1. So stay tuned, because there will be a lot of good stuff coming your way this summer. Thanks again for the support, and until next time, peace.